and they'll kind of brashly go ahead and do it anyway, in spite of it. And I've only had to do that once, though, ask somebody to leave. And it was very embarrassing for them, especially for the spouse, the wife that was with them, to kind of go back up in front of, I don't know, 8 or 10 rows of 400 people watching them as they had to go back where they were. I don't understand why these good church-going folks keep inviting Jesus to their parties. They know that he's going to make a scene somehow. And yet they keep on asking. Haven't they heard the stories that have been rumored about him when others talk about him? Oh, I don't know if you want to do that or not. He had a prostitute attend to him. Oh, my. Well, I saw him having lunch with Clyde, the local town drunk. I saw him carrying on with Zach, the tax collector, and with Hussein, the Egyptian. You'll cause a scene. Why do you want to do that? So there's this dinner. And with interest, Jesus is watching people. People watching is one of our favorite things to do when we go to a mall or to a concert. We love to watch people, and we love to watch people speaking or not speaking, and who's left out and who's included in groups. It's a great way to do that. So Jesus watches the guests and notes that those seemingly most important people are sitting next to the host down front. And they're sitting there rubbing elbows and hoping that some of that good luck's going to rub off. They're playing the room as they walk around beforehand. They're kind of getting next to folks, and then they'll return the favor later on and then repeat it all over again. Maybe you've done that. Noticing all of this, Jesus plays Mr. Manners and gives these instructions on where one who is invited to such a function should sit. Turns out it's the place furthest away in the back. It's away from the head table so that if by chance she isn't asked to move up, she can do so rather than be embarrassed by having to give up her seat and move to a back row or to the back seat at an auditorium. Pretty common sense, right? Everybody would think that's the thing you ought to do. And then Jesus adds this zinger in at the end. The first will be last, and the last will be first in the kingdom of heaven. And then he turns to the hosts and with these instructions about whom to invite to his next party. Not his friends and his movers and the shakers in the community, but rather it's the lame and the blind and the poor and the disfigured, because they can't return the favor like all your well-to-do friends can and probably should. They eat off of paper plates when they eat. And when they do go out, they feed their kids McDonald's burgers because that's all that they can afford. Bring them in, Jesus says. Feed them and with the best Wagyu beef steak and the best golden wheat bread and the most flavorful wine. Treat them with dignity and kindness, and God will honor you in the coming kingdom. Now you say, wait a minute, Jesus. Why can't I invite my friends and families to this party, to this gathering? It doesn't seem fair. Well, maybe it's because they're not in need of hospitality. If they can return the favor, they probably didn't need it in the first place. But the poor and the marginalized and the immigrant and the foreigner among us, those detached from our society, those different from us, those whose seats were at the back of the bus, who ate out the back door, what they had taken away from them, and they don't have anything, sometimes not even their dignity anymore. Sometimes they need to sit up front. There was this ritual also going on at that time. Those groups that he mentioned, except for the poor, maybe even the poor, they were considered ritually unclean. And they weren't welcome in any place. Worship party, gathering, it didn't matter. But especially at a place where the social elite were gathering in town. And I'm guessing that that's probably one of the reasons why there had to be temple guards at the Jerusalem temple, and why there were doorkeepers at the more wealthy homeowners to keep the riffraff out on the street, out from those places. Keep the temple and the party areas clean. They could go to the back door if they wanted something to eat. Not only were they unclean, but anyone who touched them was likewise considered unclean. And so, if you were to invite them to a party, you run the risk of becoming infected with their stuff. Jesus says, invite them anyway. How do you think Jesus' words were received then? How are they received today? In a world like we live in today, where we read and proclaim proudly that all of us were created equal, it's easy to miss that we have our own subtle ways of distinguishing one group, one class of people from another. And more often, these distinctions hinder us and blind us to the common ground that we share. A number of years ago, there was a Muslim, American, and an Israeli, and three women, Muslim, American, and Israeli, who sat down to have a conversation over coffee. They discovered, despite their vast differences that were among them, between them, that they had a love for their children. And they had hopes and dreams for the world were the same between the three of them. And that their struggles that they had were the very same struggles all between the three of them. All three of them had those struggles. And they decided to kind of publicize that gathering, and they began to meet more often, and other groups began to meet with them and about them in groups of three to find out not what the differences were, but what the commonalities were between them, hoping to make a change. You can imagine that it didn't go very far because of powers and prejudices from outside that quickly did away with those groups. 62 years ago, this past Thursday, Dr. Martin Luther King echoed Jesus' call. I have a dream, he said, a dream of a world where the rough places are made plain, and where the crooked is made straight, and the heights of impossibility be made low, and the low places of pain and suffering be filled in and leveled. He brought that from Isaiah. He had a dream about a world where kingdom values and kingdom behavior are the normal behavior for all people. And where you sat was important. Where do you sit? Our goal, he said, is to create a beloved community, as this will require a qualitative change in our souls as well as a substantive change in our lives. Not only in our hearts, but also in what we do, how we live our lives. Change doesn't come easy. Change never comes easy. And I hope those that are running in the next years for political office understand that. Just saying what is wrong will never be enough to change the world. You have to lift up a vision of what is right. And that's what Jesus is doing, urging us to live by a new standard, invitational and loving and filled with grace and filled with faith. And when we live in such a style, the world can be transformed. Imagine those looking in the window and listening to, who weren't invited inside this gathering in Jesus' time. Imagine them looking in the window and hearing him tell this parable. By the way, when you have a party, invite the lame and the blind and those on the outside. Imagine their spirits being lifted, because suddenly they know that they too are included in this kingdom. We were all like those two folks that I had to ask to go back to their seats in the Peace Center that night. Jesus cautioned them and cautions us as well. We always want the best for us. We want the best seats. We want the power and the glory. We want to be at the front at the expense of everybody else in the back. We were like that. But you and I, we have been rescued by a radical God revealed to us in Jesus Christ. And with a radical grace to live in a radical kingdom where the first will be last and the last will be first, where everybody is part of the kingdom, those first and those last. Everyone's still in, maybe a little less proud than we were before, but everyone is in, because it's a place where everyone can come to the table and where there's no shortage of good seats for anyone. For those who have ears to hear this morning, hear. Amen. Having heard that word, let us stand and affirm that which we can believe using the historic